Ladies and gentlemen, let us take a moment to reflect on the battles we face in silence. We all know that in life, there are forces that will rise up against us, enemies that seek to tear us down, to belittle our spirit, to diminish our light. They speak against us, they plot behind our backs, and they try to steal our peace. But I stand here today to remind you of a truth that is eternal and undeniable. God is about to silence your enemy. You see, there is a divine justice at work, one that moves in ways we cannot always comprehend, yet its power is undeniable. It's a force that works behind the scenes, orchestrating the universe in perfect order. When hatred and injustice try to wrap themselves around us like chains, we must trust in the unseen hand of God. His justice will not fail. And so, in the midst of the noise, I call you to remember the silent strength that resides within you. When words come to wound, when accusations rise like a storm, there is a strength in silence. It is not the silence of submission or defeat, but the silence of waiting. The silence where God's presence speaks louder than any enemy's voice. That silence is where your strength is renewed, where your heart is restored. We may grow impatient. We may wonder why the battle drags on. But know this: divine timing is perfect. What may feel like a long season of suffering is, in fact, the time God is using to prepare you for the moment when He will move. He knows the hour, He knows the moment, and He knows when He will silence the enemies that seek to harm you. His timing is not our own, but it is always perfect. Trust in that. In these seasons, our faith is tested. Our enemies may seem to have the upper hand, but let me remind you, this test is not to break you, it is to build you. Your faith is your shield. It is your declaration that even when the storm rages, you stand firm in God's ability to act on your behalf. Your faith is what will carry you through, and when the moment comes, it will be your faith that sees you through to victory. Remember, God's authority over all things cannot be challenged. When He speaks, no force in this world can override His command. His power is unmatched, and His justice is unwavering. When God decides to silence your enemies, there will be no power that can stand against it. The plans of your adversaries will come to nothing, for He who is for you is greater than anything that can come against you. And finally, let us embrace the freedom that comes with God's intervention. When God silences the enemy, He releases us from the burden of defending ourselves. We do not need to engage in petty battles or waste energy on words that are meant to harm us. Rest in His promise. The battle belongs to Him, and His victory is sure. I leave you with this: God is about to silence your enemies. Trust in His timing, trust in His justice, and know that the battle is not yours to fight. Stand strong, stay silent when needed, and wait for the moment when God will move on your behalf. Your victory is coming, and when it does, it will be final. There is an undeniable force at work in this world, a power that often moves in ways we cannot fully comprehend, but whose effects ripple through the very core of our existence. This force is not bound by time or space, nor can it be confined to the limits of human understanding. It operates in the unseen, in the places where our eyes cannot reach, yet it is felt deep within the soul, stirring us to our core. When we find ourselves surrounded by injustice, when hatred and falsehood are aimed at us from all directions, it is easy to feel as if we are powerless, as if the weight of the world is pressing upon us with no escape in sight. But it is in these moments that we must hold on to the truth that God's justice is always at work, even when we cannot see it with our eyes or feel its immediate impact. In a world filled with conflict, corruption, and cruelty, we often find ourselves confronted by forces that seem larger than life, enemies who seem to hold all the power. It may feel as though the scales of justice are tipped against us, that those who perpetrate wrongs go unpunished, and that the good and the righteous are left to suffer. But even in these times of darkness, we must remember one fundamental truth. God's justice is never blind, nor is it slow to act. In fact, it is precisely in these moments, when it seems as though evil is winning, that God's justice is working behind the scenes, quietly setting the stage for His perfect timing. The nature of divine justice is different from our human understanding. We, in our limited perspective, may seek immediate retribution or revenge, hoping for quick vindication. But God's justice is not hurried, and it is not motivated by petty emotions. It is rooted in righteousness and truth, and it always seeks to restore, to heal, and to set things right in the most profound and lasting way. When we face injustice, we may wonder why things take so long, why it seems as though God is silent in the midst of our suffering. But we must trust that God is not absent. His hand is always at work, even in the quiet moments, even in the spaces where we cannot see. Sometimes His justice works in ways that we cannot fully understand at first. It may not come in the form we expect or in the timing we desire, but it will always be perfect. In the unseen places, God is preparing the ground for His justice to be revealed. The moment may come when the truth is finally brought to light, when the lies are exposed, and when the wrongs are set right. But until that moment arrives, we are called to trust in God's sovereignty. We must trust that His timing is never flawed, that His wisdom surpasses our own, and that His justice will always prevail. As we navigate the storms of life, we must remember that God sees all. Nothing escapes His notice. Every hurt, every betrayal, every injustice committed against us is known to Him. And while we may not always understand the way in which He works, we can be certain that God's justice is perfect, unshakable, and inevitable. It is a force that will rise up at the appointed time and silence all that stands in opposition to His truth. In the midst of your struggles, in the face of every injustice, hold fast to this truth. God's justice is working on your behalf. Trust that, even in the unseen, He is making a way, preparing a path for His righteousness to be revealed. Rest assured, there will come a time when His justice will be made manifest, and when it does, it will be a justice that restores, heals, and sets everything right. Until then, stand firm, be patient, and know that God's justice is always at work, and it will never fail. The face of adversity, when the world seems to turn against us, when we feel the weight of every harsh word, every insult, and every accusation, it's easy to become overwhelmed. We may find ourselves drowning in the noise of criticism and condemnation, each word a burden upon our spirit. It feels as though the world is trying to define us, to box us into a narrative that doesn't align with who we truly are. The pressure of these external forces can cause us to feel small, insignificant, and powerless. But it is in these very moments, when the storm of opposition rages around us, that God calls us to something deeper, to find strength in silence. There is a quiet power in silence, one that the world often overlooks. In the silence, when we are not trying to defend ourselves or justify our actions, we create space for God to move. This is not a silence of passivity, nor is it a silence born of fear. Rather, it is the silence of trust, the quiet surrender to God's will, knowing that He sees and knows all things. It is in these moments of stillness that we are reminded of a profound truth. God's presence speaks louder than any enemy's voice. When we are silent in the face of attack, we are not allowing our enemies to win. Instead, we are giving God the room to act on our behalf. Our enemies may try to intimidate us with their words, may try to provoke us into responding with anger or frustration, but in the quiet, we remain anchored in the peace that only God can provide. In the silence, we are not weak. We are strong in the Lord, trusting that He is our defender, our protector, and our advocate. In our silence, God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating events, and preparing the way for His divine intervention. When we are tempted to speak out in our own defense, to explain ourselves, or to argue our case, God reminds us that we need not fight our battles alone. He is our strength. The enemy may seek to silence us with their words, but in God's silence we find the truest form of power. It is not a power that is loud or boastful. It is a quiet strength that is unshakable, a strength that comes from knowing who we are in Christ and resting in the knowledge that God's justice will prevail in His perfect time. The world may tell us to fight back, to make our voices heard at all costs. But God calls us to something higher. He calls us to the strength of silence, to a place where we can be still and know that He is God. When we allow God to fight our battles for us, we release the need to control the outcome. We trust that He will speak on our behalf, that His presence will be the loudest voice in the room, and that His will be done, regardless of what the enemy tries to say. In the silence we find peace. In the silence we find healing. And in the silence we find the strength to rise above the noise. So when the weight of the world feels unbearable, when the words of the enemy seem to have power over us, let us remember that there is strength in silence. There is power in the quiet surrender to God's will. And in that silence, His presence will speak louder than anything else. Our timing is often filled with impatience, as we long for the answers to our prayers to come swiftly, as we hope for the storms to pass quickly and for our struggles to be resolved. We want things to happen on our terms, in the moments we feel most ready, and in the ways that align with our understanding. But God's timing is not like ours. It is a timing that operates in the fullness of wisdom, in the depths of understanding, and within the context of His eternal plan for our lives. What may appear to us as a season of defeat, a time when nothing seems to go right, may actually be the moment when God is preparing us for something greater, something that we are not yet able to fully see. In our human nature, we desire immediate gratification, the quick resolution of problems, and the immediate manifestation of change. We believe that when things seem bleak, they are permanently broken. But God does not operate within the constraints of our expectations. His ways are higher than ours, and His thoughts are beyond our comprehension. What we perceive as failure or delay is often His divine preparation for the miracles that lie ahead. In moments when we feel as though we are on the verge of defeat, it is often the moment when God is setting the stage for His most powerful intervention. God's timing is flawless. He knows when the time is right to act, to move, and to bring about the changes we have been waiting for. While we may grow weary in the waiting, God is working behind the scenes, aligning circumstances, opening doors, and preparing us for the blessings that are yet to come. The delays we face are not indications of God's denial, but rather the evidence of His deep care and preparation. He is not withholding good things from us. He is preparing us to receive them in a way that will serve our greater purpose, in a way that will glorify Him and fulfill the unique calling He has placed on our lives. It is in those moments of waiting that we are refined, our faith is tested, our patience is stretched, and our trust in God's plan is deepened. The waiting period, though challenging, is often the very season in which we are being prepared to carry the weight of the blessings that God is about to release. We may not understand it in the moment, but every delay, every challenge, and every moment of silence is being used by God to shape us into the person He needs us to be for the next phase of our journey. God knows exactly when the moment is right to silence our enemies, to lift us from our struggles, and to move us into a season of victory. And when He does, it will be in a way that serves our greater purpose. It will be a victory that is not just for our benefit, but for His glory, a testimony of His faithfulness and His perfect timing. The way He works will be unmistakable, and His intervention will be so much greater than anything we could have imagined or planned for ourselves. As you wait, remember that God's timing is always perfect. Trust that He is at work, even in the moments of silence, even in the seasons that seem to stretch on without end. His timing will not fail, and when the moment is right, He will act in a way that will serve your greater purpose, bringing you to the place where you were always meant to be. Hold fast to the truth that God's timing is perfect, and His plan is always for your good. In His time, everything will fall into place. There are moments in life when we feel as though the weight of the world is pressing down on us, when it seems as though every circumstance is working against us, and our enemies are gaining ground. These are the times when our faith is tested, when our resolve is pushed to its limits, and when we wonder whether we will be able to withstand the storms. The trials we face, the challenges that seem insurmountable, can make us question everything we believe. we may find ourselves asking why we must endure such hardship, why it feels like we are being overwhelmed by forces beyond our control. But in these very moments, God is calling us to something greater. These tests are not meant for our destruction, rather they are opportunities for us to reaffirm our trust in the Almighty, to place our faith in His power to act on our behalf, and to rely on His strength when we feel weak. Faith is not something that can be fully understood until it is tested. It is easy to speak of trust in God when everything is going well, when the path is smooth and the sun is shining. But true faith is forged in the fires of adversity. It is in the midst of our trials that we discover the depth of our trust in God's ability to sustain us. These tests are not designed to break us, but to build us, to strengthen us in ways we could never imagine. Every trial, every challenge, every moment of testing is an opportunity for us to lean more deeply into God, to believe that He is with us even when we cannot see the way forward. When we face adversity, it is natural to feel fear, doubt, and even anger. We may want to take matters into our own hands, to fight back, to force an outcome that aligns with our desires. But in these moments, God is calling us to surrender, to trust in His power and His timing. Our enemies may seem to have the upper hand, and the challenges may seem overwhelming, but we must remember that our battles are not fought in our own strength. Our true power comes from the Almighty, who promises to fight on our behalf. When we place our faith in Him, it becomes a shield, protecting us from the lies of the enemy, from the accusations that seek to destroy us, and from the fear that tries to paralyze us. The enemy may try to convince us that we are alone, that God has abandoned us, or that we are not worthy of His help. But these are the lies that seek to undermine our faith, to make us doubt the goodness of God. The truth is that God is always with us, even in the darkest moments, even when we cannot see Him working. His presence surrounds us, His love envelops us, and His power sustains us. It is in our weakest moments that God's strength is made perfect. Our faith becomes the anchor that holds us steady in the storm, the shield that protects us from the arrows of doubt and fear. As we face the tests of life, let us remember that these trials are not our defeat. They are opportunities for growth, for deeper trust, and for a closer relationship with the One who holds all things in His hands. The test of faith is not about avoiding difficulty, but about choosing to trust God in the midst of it. When we choose to stand firm in our faith, when we reaffirm our trust in God's power to act on our behalf, we will emerge from the trial stronger, more resilient, and more deeply rooted in His love. So, as you walk through the fire, remember that your faith is your shield. It will protect you, strengthen you, and carry you through. Trust in God, and know that His power is greater than any enemy or trial you may face. In the end, your faith will be your victory, and God's glory will shine through your perseverance. There is a profound truth that we must hold on to in the face of life's challenges and opposition. No weapon formed against us can prosper when God has already spoken. There are moments in life when it feels as though the weight of the world is pressing down on us, when every accusation, every harsh word, and every unjust action seems aimed directly at our hearts. In these times, we may feel the urge to defend ourselves, to explain our actions, or to fight back against the voices that seek to tear us down. The pressure to justify our worth, to prove our integrity, and to silence our accusers can become overwhelming. Yet, there is a profound truth that we must hold on to. When God silences the enemy, He frees us from the burden of defending ourselves. In the midst of life's battles, we are often tempted to take matters into our own hands, believing that we must fight for our reputation, our honor, or our peace. But God's ways are higher than ours, and His wisdom surpasses our understanding. The truth is that God is not asking us to fight every battle on our own. Instead, He calls us to rest in His promise, to trust that He is the one who will fight for us. When God decides to silence the enemy, He is removing the weight of self-death from our shoulders. We are no longer required to prove our worth or to engage in the noise of conflict. We are called to step back, to be still, and to allow God's presence to do the work that we cannot. The enemy may seek to make us doubt ourselves, to sow seeds of insecurity and confusion, and to push us into a corner where we feel compelled to react. But God's silence is not a sign of His absence. It is the mark of His intervention, orchestrating the resolution that we cannot see with our natural eyes. It is in these moments that God is claiming victory on our behalf, moving on our behalf in ways that we could never accomplish through our own strength. The silence is not empty. It is full of the power of God's promise that He will fight for us. When we trust in God's ability to defend us, we release the burden of self-justification. There's a freedom that comes with surrendering our need to explain ourselves, to prove ourselves right, and to seek validation from others. The battle is not ours to fight. It belongs to God. And when we allow Him to take control, when we surrender our need to be heard or understood, we experience a peace that surpasses all understanding. We no longer have to engage in the noise of defense, the exhausting cycle of proving our worth. Instead, we rest in the knowledge that God, in His perfect timing, will silence the voices of the enemy and vindicate us in ways that will bring glory to His name. Every silence, every moment where we feel the urge to speak but choose to remain still, is a declaration of God's sovereignty. It is in that silence that God claims victory over our enemies, that He quiets the storms of accusation and shame. It is in those moments of quiet trust that we affirm our faith in His ability to fight for us, to act on our behalf, and to bring about the justice that only He can deliver. When the enemy tries to fill your life with noise, when the accusations seem endless, and when the weight